Hello, everyone. Erudessa Gentian here. I am with the Mr. S.D. Howard. He's the author of The City of Snow and Stars. So, Stephen, thank you so much for letting me come on and hang out with you today and ask you a whole bunch of questions. It's going to be lots of fun.
Yes, I am so excited. And just so everyone knows, like, I told her I did not want to know any of the questions ahead of time. So whatever I'm answering, it is off the cuff for this.
For the moment. And we're actually here for the illustrated version. What's the word I'm looking for? I'm so sorry. Your illustrated not production. I'm wrong thing.
Pre-order campaign.
Book launch. There we go. Thank you. Yes.
Book launch, pre-order campaign.
That's what this blog tour is for.
Bookish things.
Yes. And it's the illustrated version of The City of Snow and Stars, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So first off, what is the book about?
That's a great question. So The City of Snow and Stars is a gritty YA Christian fantasy novel tackling subjects around abuse. So we're talking physical, emotional, sexual, mental, human trafficking, and the question of why does God let bad things happen? These were topics that were very close to me. You know, for anyone who's read the book, in the author's note, I address right up front the fact that I went through and was sexually abused from the time that I was 4 to the time that I was 13. And the recovery process of, you know, having trauma memories resurface in 2016 and again in 2018 really played a huge role in the story of Trinia and like what she goes through. And you know, it's heavy. Like, there's nothing graphic, but emotionally it's just heavy. It was heavy to write. You know, and the amazing part of it, you know, so Trinia has the ability to perfectly duplicate herself in mind and body. And so she can create as many duplicates of herself as she wants. And each duplicate, because it's perfect in mind and body, thinks that it's the original Trinia. So it doesn't know that it's a duplicate. So there's a lot of like morally gray questions that come up with that, and like ethical questions of like, oh, she just straight up sacrifices one in the first chapter. Like, wow, this is getting intense. And it's really following her journey of trying to escape her power hungry and incredibly abusive father. You know, he sees her ability as his key to reestablishing the old Ergid Empire, which ruled for thousands of years and has been basically, it was annihilated by Elohai, which is who's God, you know, after pronouncing judgment on them when they didn't repent. And I mean, he gave them like 700 years and they were just like, nope, don't hear you. And
gosh,
you know,
that doesn't sound familiar at all.
Yeah. You know, there's a man of legends, there's a crown prince on the run from responsibility, there's a sassy shifter,
there's a talking wolf. I remember reading
there is a talking
that,
wolf.
And I was so excited.
Yes.
I've got to read the story now just for the talking wolf.
Yes. Yeah. The talking wolf, Mandar, he's the only stable-minded being in the entire book. He's just rock steady. You know, he is a creature in the service of his maker, and that is who he is, and he is rock solid in that. And I love that about Mandar, because everybody else is just pure dumpster fire chaos. And he's just watching there going, guys, like, can we not do this all the time? Like, let's come back from the emotional precipice, shall we? So that's in a nutshell. Trini is on the run. She's trying to find the kingdom, or to go to the kingdoms that destroyed her empire, and to try and stop her father from, this mass genocide essentially of her people and then literally everyone else. And there's, blood-sucking banshees and crazy creatures. I mean, there's all sorts of fun and exciting things in this world that I'm building.
This is like a roller coaster ride here.
Yes.
Goodness.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to read this.
Yeah, and
I really feel like
the illustrations should
what
be
was the whole
awesome.
thing again? Oh, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Yes. Yay. Okay. Okay, then so why did you actually decide to get it illustrated?
So the interesting part was I hadn't actually thought about it. Like, I mean, it's been a dream of mine. Like, I love like Alan Lee's artwork, for his Lord of the Rings. I love that stuff. And I was like, someday, maybe, kind of, sort of, hopefully it will happen. And then I was in a meeting with the head of publishing, and he's like, what would you want more as an author, an audiobook or an illustrated edition? And I was like, well, because I went the publishing route, I own 100% of the distribution rights and I get 100% of the royalties for everything. So I have complete creative control over the book. And I was like, I'm actually getting the audiobook done through ACX right now with a narrator who's absolutely fantastic. And I'm okay with actually splitting the royalties on that because she's going to market the book to all of her friends and family and everyone that she knows. And that's an entirely different group of people. So it's actually working in my favor. I was like, I would rob a bank, maybe two, for an illustrated edition of my book. And it's just like, well, we've never done something like that before, so let's use your book as the guinea pig. I'm like, okay. And so
Twist
I'm
your
like,
arm.
yeah, twist my arm a little bit more, why don't you? And I'm like, yeah, I'm game. Let's do it. And so, I went in and found like different illustration types and kind of presented it to the head of design and was like, this is what I would like to kind of see. And I've got, mock cover art as part of the blog tour. Like, anybody who's seen me posting on social media a lot has seen the mock-up cover. It'll be on the campaign page. But it's I'm all about contrast. And so, the regular version is black and white. And so my hardcover, which is set to come out, I believe sometime in August, which I'm excited about, and I'm going to be meeting with the cover designer here in the next couple of weeks. But my goal for it, because I get to play around with the cover a little bit, is to start having this spine be white with the black lettering and look like it's bleeding into the main part of it, because the illustrated edition cover is going to be like a bone white with black font and like a black like silhouette of Trinia mid duplication that pays ode to chapter 1 and what happens. So it's kind of this steady progression.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, I'm
like
super stoked for it.
Yes. Oh, I love how it just merges into the next person. I like that a lot. Oh, that's pretty fun.
Yeah, it's gonna look so amazing.
3 copies of your book now.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. Well, and the part that I enjoy the most is that with the hybrid publishing model, I get to people get to join me in the entire process, which is super fun for me because, you know, they get to join the group, they get to see like early concept art, they'll get to see the graphic, the new cover design early, you know, and all those different things.
Oh, that's fun. Okay. After this, we need to talk.
Yeah.
I want to be part of that now. Very exciting. Super exciting. Okay. So, well, we kind of talked about what inspired the City of Snow and Stars. Was there any particular like writing style that you think has really bled into your personal style, or are there any kind of author heroes that you really try to emulate?
Yeah. I would say there are three, maybe four main ones that I've really pulled from. So one of the big ones, Tolkien. He has a whole Tolkien shelf. I mean, my dad read The Hobbit to me when I was like, I think it was around 9, and then I read Lord of the Rings when I was 10, and then I finished books 2 and 3 before the second movie came out. I'm dating myself. I was just a wee little lad, but I mean, Tolkien's world building is just so intricate and rich that I was just like, I want to write like that. I want to create this complex world that has all of these different elements in it. And Frank Herbert, who wrote the Dune saga, science fiction, the like kind of like the grandpappy of science fiction, the political machinations within the Dune saga, like I loved the complexity of those. Stephen R. Lawhead, who writes Celtic high fantasy, the Song of Albion trilogy is like, it's a trilogy that I go back to like again and again and again because it's so good. And I actually pay homage to it in book 1 with some of the creatures, the Kelnish, that are like basically like demon zombie shadow spawns of the queen Banshee. They're her kids. She's got issues. And the storytelling, the way he portrays story just was really inspiring. And Ted Dekker, you know, the thriller type pacing of all of his books, you know, it just has this page turning quality to it. And so I wanted to emulate, you know, all of these. And then Tolkien, you know, with his allegory, or C.S. Lewis with his allegory, and just kind of weaving all of them together into that style that I've been developing to create bingeable books that, you know, they're page turning, they leave you wanting the next chapter, like, but it's not without, you know, showcasing this beautiful world, you know, at the same time.
Those good styles, good styles to blend together. I like that. I like it.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a favorite character from City of Snow and Stars?
I have favorites for different reasons, but I think like if I had to pick one that I was going to hang out with like all day, it would probably be Batani. She's the sassy shifter. She is someone who finds herself getting into trouble constantly, regardless she's not even trying, it just happens. And she has no filter at all. And so she's just saying, you know, whatever she wants without thinking about it. And she acknowledges that she's very self-aware of it. You know, she at one point, you know, is talking to Trinia and she's like, yeah, Udar, like Udar would never leave me behind, kind of thing, you know, because he threatened to tie her up to a tree. And she's like, no, scratch that. He would tie me to a tree and leave me behind, but he'd feel bad about it and come back for me later, which is a totally true thing because he deep down, Udar is a total softie, but he hates everyone except for those that he likes. And so it's, I love Batani. She's just a fantastic character. So much fun to write. So much fun to write.
Those types of characters like let you kind of play with anything, and you can just experiment and go with it. You know, not everything's gonna make it in, but like during the process, it's just anything goes at this point, and that's fun.
Yeah,
Like,
she's unpredictable.
she sounds like a hoot to hang out with.
Oh my gosh, she would be a blast. Jaden, who's the crown prince of Ungear, he is, as has been described to me by some of my readers, as a cinnamon roll or a small bean. I don't necessarily understand what all of these terms mean, but it means that he's beloved by them, and that if I harm him in any way, in addition to anything that I've already done, that I will be severely punished.
Okay, yeah. So those terms, just so you know, they're very popular in like otaku circles. So like manga and anime and Asian online novels, like that type of genre. Um, that's that is very often how you describe a character that you love, and it's usually like a super cute, just lovable character that everyone loves it and just wants to protect. You know, like, yeah, here, come be with me.
That makes so much more sense now.
Yeah.
Now I'm even more worried for what I have planned for Jaden later on.
Oh, goody. You're one of those authors. Okay.
I am. I discovered that through writing fan fiction. I was writing Lord of the Rings fan fiction for a couple of years, and the intention of doing that was to develop my craft and to test out different ideas, and to see if they worked with readers, specifically with. Well, I mean, I was going for really anybody, but I really landed with YA because of I was on Wattpad, and it was fascinating to see that what I did well was pacing, characters, plot twists, and angst. But not like Twilight level angst, because no one really wants that. That's just like icky angst. But like the deep in the gut feels angst, where you're just like, no, I don't like, but I have to read more. That kind of angst.
Okay, that's can be a very tricky thing to do well. So
It is.
congratulations.
It's very hard to do well.
Okay, so I am both looking forward to and dreading doing both. And now I just have to know, like, when it gets to the end, I'll be like, okay, I just can't be too attached to any of the characters because I just never know what's gonna happen.
You'll never know what's going to happen. I mean, surprisingly, like my fan fiction was a bloodbath. Like I killed off Aragorn, I killed off Mary, I killed off Sam's wife. Like I killed off Arwen. I mean, it was seriously, the fan fiction was just, it was like Game of Thrones level murder, like just murdering for days. And when I finished the second draft of the City of Snow and Stars, and then I went back and I had to rewrite 99% of it because I lacked the world building it needed. I was actually surprised at how many characters actually made it through the book. I was just like, look at you guys, you resilient little buggers. Like, man, dude. So yeah, it'll be interesting because this is obviously book one of 3 in the trilogy. I'm working on book 2 right now, The City of Stone and Sorrow. And then the third book, at least right now, will be the City of Shadow and Song.
I love these titles. They're great. I think I have yet to actually read your stuff, but just from what we've talked about so far, like the title seemed to really capture the feel of the story. They're it's a good young adult type, catchy type thing. But you've got some pretty difficult things and like themes throughout your stories, it seems like. And so it's definitely not all like rainbows and sunshine.
Yeah.
And that also kind of comes through in the title, but also you have a life there at the end of it. That and I think just reading through, I've been website stalking you for a little bit, kind of exploring your website and seeing kind of what you were about and what the story was about and everything. And it seems like that's important to you, like showing and understanding now where a lot of the inspiration of the story came from. Like that's your life. Like God seems to have really brought you out of some dark places, and you've had some struggles to go through, and that's a lifetime thing that you're just gonna have to. That's a lifetime journey, but it seems like God has really shown Himself to you even in those moments, and it looks like you bring that out in your stories as well. So
Yeah.
very exciting.
Absolutely. It's such an important thing to me to showcase. I don't see enough of it in Christian fiction like I would want to. I joke with people and say, like 98% of Christian fiction is Amish romance. I mean, the real stat for that is probably closer to 97%, but I tack on I tack on the extra 1% I like to round up. But it's and I get, like, not everybody wants to deal with hard topics. Most of these topics Christian authors don't want to touch. They'll stick with either something that's a little bit fluffier, or it's just super bleached in terms of like it's just it's lacking some of the grit that real life actually has. And for me, who's gone through these things, I'm like, I don't want fluffy feels. Like, I want something that's earned. Like, I want characters to go through something and experience something, because guess what? That's what everybody else is going through. There are millions of people around the world that are being sexually abused. The human trafficking industry is, a multi-billion-dollar industry that is still happening right now. And what person at some point in their life, be they Christian or no, has asked, if God is loving, why does He let bad things happen? I've asked those questions, and I addressed this in my author's note, where I'd been asking God that for a number of years, and finally, like, He gave me an answer. And I just it literally stopped me in my tracks, and it was just kind of like, in my mind's eye, it was almost like a roll of film, and it just kind of spread out in this panorama. He's like, here's all of the bad things that have happened to you in your life, and mostly centered around the abuse. And he's like, I could have stopped all of this from happening, but I didn't. And that's where I was really challenged with God's sovereignty over everything. Because I'm like, God, if you're sovereign, you could have stopped this, because you knew it was going to happen beforehand. You're in control. You could have stopped it, but you didn't. Why? And He flipped it over. And on the other side were all of the lives that I had touched through my story. A lot of them were teens that I had met on Wattpad, that had reached out to me in messages and were just like, I don't know how you're doing that. How did you forgive your grandfather? Or, I'm going through this right now. Like, what do I do? And being able to speak into them, into their lives, and be like, you need to find someone who's safe. You need to talk to somebody. You need to go to your parents. Like, thank you for sharing with me, but you have to go to someone closer to you. And, forgiving my grandfather, that's a daily thing. There was that initial choice to let go of the seething rage that I had, and to then begin walking in forgiveness. And there are still times where that anger bubbles back up, and I acknowledge that, like, yeah, there are some days where I hope he, if Dante's Inferno, if it does have like all those levels of hell, like, I hope he burned it on every way down. And then I go, but that's not really how I feel. I honestly hope to God that before he died, he came to know Jesus as his savior, because knowing his background, it probably happened to him in the same way that he did it to me. And it doesn't excuse what he did, but it gives me context to not hate him. I can still be angry, but I don't hate him. And that is the type of message that I want my readers to get from my books, is that sometimes life sucks. Sometimes life is really hard. Sometimes life is really painful. We don't know why. We ask God, why didn't you stop this? And the very real answer is that he could. He didn't. And there's a reason for it. I got an answer, but not everybody gets an answer. I don't know why I got an answer, but I'm very thankful that I did, because it immediately changed the context. And I was like, if given the choice, if I was asked if you could go back and change it, would you? And I can honestly say that I would go through it all again, because each one of those kids, they mattered. Even though I don't know them, I don't know where they ended up, but I hope to God that them reaching out and me being able to speak what God was doing in my life at that time helped them and encouraged them.
Wow. Well, thank you for being willing to tackle these things in your writing, because that's not an easy process for you either. Having kind of maybe almost reliving some of that as you're writing it down, and for those who don't know, writing is a long process where you have to rehash things out and rewrite things, and your book probably went through at least 5 versions.
Oh, yeah.
Mine went through like 10, 15, something like that. It was crazy. So like having to rehash that every time, that's got to be draining for you. So thank you for being willing to go through that. Because I agree. I think it's for some reason Christian fiction is equated with, like you said, something very fluffy, very preachy stuff. Not everything is, but that's what it's equated to at the moment.
Yep.
And unfortunately, there's a reason for that, because there is that out there. And light and fluffy is great. You need that sometimes. Like, you can't constantly be immersed in darkness, because
Totally.
like you need a break from it. But it's also, you can't be hiding like an ostrich, head in the sand type of thing. You can't be doing that either. And as Christian authors, especially as like fantasy and science fiction Christian authors, we're kind of a rare breed, because even in Christian circles, we're kind of ostracized in certain times. Because people look at that and they're like, why are you writing something that's not real, and like a fantasy, like I love it when Christians come at me and you're like, how could you write fantasy? Like, how could you, why would you even think about doing some sort of magic system in your fantasy? Like, well, what are miracles? Like, that's just a Christianized word for magic. Like, that's like, yes, there's a good and a bad to it all, like to everything. So yeah, you definitely want God in all of it, but like, what do you know? Really though,
And
what is
Jesus
that?
told parables. He told stories,
Exactly.
you know,
Exactly. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's the, I mean, uh, particularly when it comes to like, you know, gritty Christian fiction. I finally threw that in there just to throw off all the Pharisees. But the interesting part was, a couple of people were like, you know, this type of thing, like you need to repent of this. And I was just like, have you ever read Judges? I mean, like, you can't make that stuff up.
Right?
Yeah. And so like just as like a fun thing to look forward to for everybody watching this, for book 2. I'm just saying, Ehud stabbing Eglon and JL driving a tent peg through a dude's head, that is getting interwoven into book 2. I'm just saying. Because we were doing a Bible study and I was like, story fodder? Yes, please. Yeah, it's gonna be amazing. I can just tell you that. And then if they're like, that's heresy, be like, that's from the Bible, yo.
Exactly.
Have fun drinking that cup of tea.
I like to say I'm a firm believer in, as Christians, we have let the entertainment industry be taken over by them. It is not our industry anymore. It's not, which is really sad because that's how most of the world is influenced. Entertainment industry, and that includes movies, uh, any type of vocal drama, the books, like everything. Um, and I'm a firm believer that as Christians, as Christian authors, we should be showing people how to react to life in a godly way. And because if we don't, who else is going to tell them? How are they going to know? You know, this a book, a young adult book might be the only godly influence they have in their life, you know, because
Yep.
it that might be it. So how are they going to know how to react to these horrible things that are happening in everyday life, in a godly way, if they're not told how, if they're not shown, hey, this is livable, that you can live this out. And so for me personally, I really felt like God told me your writing needs to stay clean. So I'm a clean author, but by clean, I just mean I don't have sex and I don't have language. You know, like I don't have cussing, and that's it. Everything else is pretty much available to me, and so I'm like, hey, if God gives me a story, this is what's got to go. So thank you for being willing to tackle this, because even in our own circles, you can get ostracized for something like that. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you.
I have noticed. Yeah, but you know, the interesting part about it is that when I was preparing my campaign for this, the first time around, just for the book itself, I was like, okay, I have to put a label to it. And God's like, I want you to put Christian fantasy. I was like, ooh, okay. That's an interesting way to go with that. Are you sure? Are you positive that's what I need to do? And he's like, yeah, I am actually. I was like, ah, crap. And so, you know, I labeled it Christian fantasy, and I know for a fact that hurt my campaign. You know, because if I had done all the world building stuff like one of my fellow students did, and her book is like Skyrim level world building, like it's ridiculous. Summer Twilight, it's over here, just saying. Summer Twilight by Bridget Smith, you guys, you need to go buy that book. It's fantastic, and seriously, if they don't make a video game out of it, I will riot at some point. But I knew that putting Christian fantasy immediately was going to have a negative connotation for the vast majority of people, because they're like, it's going to be preachy. And then God took it a step further and was like, yeah, you're writing for Christians. I'm like, but they don't like this. Like, but why? So I did a lot of grumbling. And then, as he does, he lovingly humbled me through the whole process. But it was just like, I was like, you know what? The more I looked at Christian fantasy and how it's not been done well, and I'm like, and everyone's always like, so many people like, don't write Christian fantasy, don't label it Christian fantasy, because Christian fantasy, no one reads it because it sucks. I'm like, well, how about we write books that don't suck in Christian fantasy, and then people will read more? Like, I can't be the first person who's thought of this, but it's like, and I've appreciated every single review that's come on, that people have said that they're Christian and that they appreciate that I'm tackling these subjects. Those mean a lot. But it's like, I want a book that can tackle hard subjects with a biblical worldview, that tackles hard things, but leaves the reader with truth. Like, that's ultimately what I want, because right now, Christian authors or Christian readers, for the most part, have their choice of a limited selection of, clean fantasy or biblical based Christian worldview books for fantasy, or the vast majority of secular fiction. And there are whole swaths that have no sex or language or anything in it. But sometimes it just sneaks in, and the reader's just like, oh, okay, well, I can't bleach my eyes out because that won't do anything, and it's like, I want better for Christian readers. And so, I want to give people an experience that is positive and that ultimately points them to God, regardless of where they're at in their life. Like, that's my hope.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like you're doing a pretty good job from the reviews that I've read. It sounds like God's blessing your efforts. So congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Very excited for you. Let's see here. Okay. What is the hardest part of writing for you?
So I think when it comes to the writing process that I've developed over the last couple of years, it tends to be getting the whole book outlined. Now, the first draft of The City of Snow and Stars was 100% pantsed. I had no plot, no character arcs. I had no idea what I was doing with the book. I just knew I needed to sit down and I needed to get words out. And it was a dumpster fire. I mean, it was so all over the place. There was muskets and cannons involved at one point, and I'm like, what is happening with this book? And having to finish draft 2, and then from my beta feedback and my acquisition editor, when I had submitted to the publisher and it was accepted, I looked for, the comparison of like what lined up in the middle between the two, and basically it was world building. And I had rushed draft 2 to finish it in time for submission. So I knew that I was going to need to do some work on it, but it ended up being like a 99% rewrite of the entire book start to finish. So the ideas that I had for book 2 just went just gone with the wind. By the time I finished book 1 and started outlining book 2, so much had changed from the original idea that it really took some time and some thoughtfulness in how I was going to do it. Now, I have a very methodical process now. I'm more of a plantster. So I use Campfire Pro to outline everything. But the way that I outline, so I build books. I don't write books. that's my thing. I build bingeable books. My word count goal is 80,000. I'm going to have 40 chapters in the book, and each chapter as a baseline will be about 2,000 words long, which will equate out to about a 10-minute read time ish. My chapters, I know that will fluctuate above and below that 2,000 baseline. But I break my book up into 4 acts. And so chapter 10, chapter 20, and chapter 30 are my transitional chapters that I use to have a event that launches us into the next act. And so when I was building book 2, trying to figure out, okay, like where are the characters at? Where do I need them to end? What are the themes that I'm wrestling with? So like book 2's themes, and I have it up on my whiteboard. Doubting God, is it okay? You know, that's a question that I've come across, and I've asked myself, like, is it okay to doubt God? And so I'm tackling that theme. A deeper dive into human trafficking. And followers aren't perfect, they're beautifully broken. And there's a line from Elohai in it where he says, I do the best work with broken things. And I feel like that's such a true statement of God, because if you look historically at the Bible, like all them peeps were nutter butters, like all over the place. And but through that brokenness, his strength and his ability comes through. And so trying to look at those themes, and then like the personal themes of like, what is each character trying to wrestle with through this book? And then building out act by act. And there's, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 POVs in the book. And so, you know, trying to then figure out how do I space out the POVs at
Point of view for those who are wondering.
Yes, point of view. How do I manage them? You know, some of them will share a chapter rather than getting their own full chapter. Like who's going to be like the main point of view throughout the book? How are we going to get from point A to point B? How does the world building come into play? Especially with book 2, there's more world building involved because book 1, we're on the run, you know, from the forces of evil, and it's kind of nonstop. Book 2 has some more elements of like that kind of political intrigue, that the back end scheming of different, you know, lords and stuff. And so it's like, how does all of this play out in the bigger picture for book 2? So that I think is the most difficult part. But rather than outlining like every detail, I will put basically like the theme for that particular chapter, and then I let my imagination do the rest. I just build it from there. To me, I've found that to be the balance between plotting and then just pantsing with no idea what I'm doing. It's like main theme connects to this, perfect. Now let's just write and basically see what the characters are up to at this point, because they just do what they want. I've tried to control them, but they're a crazy bunch.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. I had it down to 5 POVs, and then one of the characters was like, oh, by the way, here's my backstory. You're going to need that for later. I was like, no. I killed off people that had POVs in book 1, so that way I didn't have to worry about all you. And she's like, yeah, you're still going to need that. And I was like, oh, bye-bye.
It's okay, more for the party. It's all good.
Yeah. It's good. It's going to be a fun POV regardless, though. So I'm excited.
There you go. That's all that really matters.
It's true.
So do you have a favorite process of the writing process? Favorite part of the writing process?
I think my favorite part of the writing process is once I've developed my outline, it's really just getting into the chapters and building in plot twists. Like I was halfway through the rewrite of book one, and I just had just this moment, mind blown moment. I was just like, oh, yes, this is book two, chapter 10. And because I knew that was going to be my transitional chapter anyway. And I was like, what better place to put this mind blowing plot twist than in chapter 10? For some of my alpha readers who are reading through book one or book two right now as I'm writing it, one of them was just like, what the hell, Stephen? Like, why would you do this to me? And I'm like, that was what I was hoping for as a reaction, as a matter of fact. But I love I love building a reader experience. That's what I love. I want to give readers that thriller-like pacing in a fantasy novel. So like I craft my book to be bingeable. Book one, the fastest binge reach time is 97 minutes. It's an 88,000 word novel from start to finish. And I mean, granted, she had insomnia, and so she had a lot of time on her hands in the middle of the night, but still slightly inhuman, but incredibly impressive. But I built the book so that the average reader, it's going to only take about 10 minutes to get through each chapter. And so I was like, my goal is that someone passes out from exhaustion with my book in their hands because they can't put the book down. I've had at least 4 or 5 people say, I finished this in a day because I couldn't stop reading. I've had somebody say that this was the best book that they've read in a decade because it kept them turning the pages. I had another reader just a week or two ago reach out to me. And he was just like, I don't read fast, and this is the fastest I've ever read a book. He's like, I finished it in a couple of days. And I'm like, that is what I wanted. I want people to not burn through it and then miss things, but the pacing is exciting. It's exhilarating. It keeps moving forward. There's little mini cliffhangers at the end of every chapter that is, if not immediately answered in the next chapter, like the opening of that chapter, it will be answered in that chapter or maybe the chapter following. And some of them, like I spend 3 or 4 chapters in a single place, and it is constantly changing and dynamic in the POV. And so it just creates this really fun reader experience that allows them to really just dive in, get to know the characters, read, and just be like, my gosh, like I finished that. Like I have to go back and I have to reread it because there's still more. One of my favorite reviews, and this gal, I mean, she's shredded like Pulitzer Prize winner books. And so I was sweating bullets a little bit when I sent my book off to her. But I sent her the first chapter, and at first she was like, yeah, I'm not going to read it. I've already read a heavy book recently, maybe in a little bit. I was like, totally fine. If you want, I can just send you the first chapter. And then you can let me know. And she's like, okay, send it. Like the next day, she's like, send me the book. She's like, I have to know what happens. I'm just like, yeah, you do. I built the first chapter that way.
Evil genius.
In introductions don't sell books. The first 10 pages sell books. And my first chapter is 7 pages. And within that first 7 pages, you see Trinia use her power immediately. And you know what the stakes are. And so by the time you've finished that, you're just like, oh, what's chapter 2? But they in the review said, as with the Chronicles of Narnia and Lord of the Rings, the City of Snow and Stars can be read on more than one level. And I was like,
Yeah.
yes, author goals accomplished. So that's my favorite part of the writing process is not just writing a book, but crafting something that I know people are going to enjoy, giving them an experience. The story is not about me. The campaigns, they are, because it's about me raising money in order to fund the cost to publish the book, because publishing is expensive. But if they're giving me their hard-earned cash, I am dedicated to giving them a good experience reading my book.
Well, we've talked a lot about your strengths as a writer, which you have quite a few apparently, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit jealous. You seem to have some really good strengths here. What do you think is one of your weaknesses as a writer?
I am way too wordy. I am so verbose. I mean, yeah. I have to be very, very careful when I'm writing, because I will tend to actually underwrite, because I'm so wordy most of the time, that my marketing and editing marketing and revisions editor was like, you need to add just a little bit more detail. I'm like, oh shoot. I don't know how to do that. Like, so I tend to take tangents. Anybody watching this video probably noticed like that 15-minute chunk of time where I got on my soapbox. That's one of those times where, I'm passionate about writing. And so I tend to just start talking and not stop. It's that is my Achilles heel. It's why when I'm doing coaching calls, like I have a 30-minute buffer between everything, because I know that 30-minute call is probably going to turn into like 59 minutes and 59 seconds before I have to hop onto another call.
Smart. Speaking of, we're actually getting pretty. I was trying to keep this to an hour, so I only have a couple more questions. I mean, I have like 15 million, but we'll stick with two more. So this one is kind of just a fun one, not about your book specifically. So, do you actually prefer books or movies? And don't worry, I'm not gonna start a lynch mob after you.
I would say the majority of the time, I prefer books. There's something about just sitting down with a book in my hands and reading, and like especially when it comes to Lord of the Rings, that was done about as well as anybody could ever do Lord of the Rings. The Hobbit, they could have done better on that one. They could have done better. But I enjoyed it for entertainment value. I try and separate it and understand, okay, look, yeah, they used it. It's like inspired by the true story. And then we get, CGI orcs. It's like Lord of the Rings did it better. I'm just saying. But the majority of the time, I would much prefer to sit down with a good book and just like have no one talk to me for like 3 days, so that way I can just read. Like that is my happy place.
Okay, yeah, I used to be very much prefer books over movies. Now it's pretty even, almost tip the other way, but mostly because, one, it kind of depends on what mood I'm in, but also because when I start reading a book, I get lost in the book, whether I actually like the book or not.
Yeah.
Irregardless of that, I usually just get sucked into the book. I get sucked into the story, and when someone pulls me out, I get so irritable.
Oh yeah.
I just want to snap at them. They're like, "What are you doing to my life?"
Yeah, it's like, begone, peasant. Like I am reading.
Exactly. So then I just start like binge reading. So now I have to, I can't allow myself to read unless I know that I have like at least a couple of days. Just pretty much free. I don't have to do a bunch of work and I can just read my heart's content. Otherwise it's got to be audiobooks or movies because I can at least have them in the background and I can still be working,
Yeah.
and do something.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay, then for our last question, what can we be looking forward to here in the near future?
Lots of fun things. Okay, so the first one obviously is the pre-order campaign for the illustrated edition. I've built some really fun perks into this for people who pre-order. So for instance, there's a community perk tier level now. There wasn't with the first one, but we've managed to do it for this. So if we reach $3,000 in pre-orders, then the book gets published in December 2021, and it'll be actually the 1-year anniversary of the book being published. The second tier is at 4,000, we get a special edition map. So I made the map for this book, but we'll have like a special illustrator come in separate from the publisher to create this map. And the artwork that they showed me as examples of what they do was beautiful. So I am super excited for that. 5,000 gets us 5 additional illustrations in the book. So at most, it will have 20 illustrations. And just for those of you who don't know, and I didn't know until I priced it out, a full page illustration costs about $100 a pop. And normally, I mean, like if I had my way and if I had deep pockets, but I'm not an author, so I don't. I would drop $4,000 on this bad boy and I would have an illustration every single chapter. But if I can get at least half the book illustrated, like perfect. And by that, I mean like a page of illustration. Graphic novel, maybe someday in the future when the trilogy is finished. Then 6,000, everybody gets digital character art of their favorite character. Which I think will be a fan favorite. $7,000 gets me a marketing campaign. That's about the only thing I get out of this is a marketing campaign to try and tell everybody about this book. And then at 9,000, if we reach that, then I take my Getting Your Story Started worksheets that I created. I get to add 2 additional worksheets to it. So it'll probably be over 100 pages at that point, and I'll get to publish it. Like officially publish it, and it'll be available on like Amazon and my website and stuff like that. So I'm hoping for those things. The perks, it's $75 for the apprentice package, and that gets you the book. Then the other 2 standard tiers get you 2 illustrated copies and 3 illustrated copies respectively. The fun ones are the bundle perks. This is where I had way too much fun. So the Lore Keeper bundle perk is limited to 15 people, but those 15 people get the illustrated edition and they essentially pre-order the audiobook for when it's released. They'll get the promo code for it that I get from Amazon, and they'll be able to download it for free. Plus, you'll be one of 15. And so basically you'll have a collector's book because I'll actually sign it Lore Keeper 1 of 15. Lore Master bundle perk. And I should say the Lore Keeper is $100. Lore Master is $200. And that gets you 2 1-hour coaching calls with me to talk about your book. And a book talk with you and your friends. So just to sit down and just talk shop and nerd about writing. Number 3, that's available to 10 people. The final one, Story Weaver. That's $350, one book. You get a once a month phone call with me through writing book 2, and a side character written into the book that can either help or hinder the main characters. That one I'm super excited about. I just have to say. Yeah.
Well, that's
Super
something.
excited. And so there's that campaign that will be starting the week of, they'll be going on during when this video is released. And it'll be running for 30 days. The hardback edition of the book is coming out, I believe, estimated sometime in August. The audiobook will be sometime in probably late September, I think. That's what we're shooting for. And I actually am publishing a 3-part story on the new Kindle Vella that will be basically lore and world building for the world. So it'll be exclusive to Kindle Vella. It will be 3 episodes, so it'll be within the free bracket, so no one will have to pay for it. And it's just stories from Wintonaith. Wintonaith is the continent. So if you guys have the opportunity, go check out that one. The first episode is already up. And it's written in like a second person RPG style, and which is fun because it's something I've played around with before, and I was like, you know what, let's just try it. Let's just see how it goes. It's a little bit different than my third person limited, but it was a lot of fun to write. So I'm working on the second episode now and hope to have that coming out here in the next couple of weeks or so.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. I'm super excited.
For everyone who's listening, I will have all of this underneath the video on the blog post. So you'll have all the links to all of these things that we've been talking about, to pre-orders, to the Kindle Vella thing. I'll have all the links to everything so that you can easily find it and get in on this.
Yeah.
Fun stuff.
And the giveaways. I'm doing 2 giveaways. I totally spaced on that. I apologize to everybody. I forgot about the giveaways. So first giveaway is it's running for the week that this blog tour is going. And so it's through Rafflecopter. Again, the links will be down below, but basically you can sign up and do all of the special things to win a free illustrated edition of the book plus 4 1-hour coaching calls with me. The second place prize gets a signed paperback, third place gets a half-hour phone call with me, and then fourth gets a free ebook. So that's that one. And if you're like, I can't afford $75, then totally understand. You can still get something out of it. I'm actually going to be hosting a referral giveaway. So on Indiegogo's page, at the very top, you'll see my book trailer, which is fantastic, by the way. The back it button, and then the little social share links. So Facebook, Twitter, and then it'll have a little chain. If you click the chain, it'll bring up a link up at the top. You right click, copy that, and then you paste that everywhere. Everybody who follows that link and backs my book, you get 1 entry. And I'm going to pick the top 3 referrals of the people who referred the most backers to the campaign, and they're each going to get a $15 Amazon Kindle gift card. Because this is about building a community of readers. So even if you're like, I can't get the book, but I can sure as heck blast this out because me loves some free Amazon monies, then definitely go check that out.
Nice. Okay, that's a lot, but it's okay. Everything will be underneath.
Yeah, there's instructions and stuff that'll be on the campaign page. Don't worry.
It'll be great. Okay. So thank you so much, Stephen. This has been an absolute blast. Super pleasure. Finally getting to meet you, sort of face to face.
Yeah.
Getting to chat today. I really hope we can do it again soon.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for hosting, and it's been so much fun talking with you.
Thank you. You have a great day.
All right, you too. Bye.
Bye.